Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for tuning in to SBAM's Small Business Briefing. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Communications, and I am joined again today by Kelly Saunders. Kelly, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, great to be with you again. Again, I am Kelly Saunders, Vice President of Policy and Engagement here at SBAM. Happy to be with you to round out the end of this week.
Yes, and you brought a friend, Kelly. We are excited to introduce the Small Business Briefing viewers to one of SBAM's not new, but newer team members. Jacob Manning joined our team last year, and Kelly, he works alongside you in all areas related to advocacy. So I know you two have a great conversation planned about some of the things we're doing in healthcare. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, we do love to highlight our teammates, and I'm actually, I'll apologize for keeping Jacob away from everybody on the Small Business Briefing viewership for this long. So Jacob joined our team last June, and he comes to us from the legislature. And he has been a great addition to our team. So Jacob, I want to welcome you to the Small Business Briefing for the first time. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and talk about what you do here at SBAM?
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. Really happy to be here on the briefing today. As Kelly had said, I was lucky enough to join the SBAM team back last June, and I'm a part of the policy team alongside Kelly and, of course, working with Brian on keeping up on everything that's going on over in Lansing. My title, I'm the Grassroots Coordinator and Policy Advisor here at SBAM. And so what that means is that I keep track of policy as it's going through the legislative process, watch committee and speak into the process in whatever ways we do, and then do what we can to inform our members and get them active in the process as well.
Yes, you are an integral part of this team. Brian and I certainly cannot do it alone. So Jacob is really in the nitty-gritty every day, looking at bill numbers and what these bills mean and how it would affect you, and keeping a methodical approach to how we track these things, how people vote, and also just the intricate details. So Jacob, one topic that we focused in on when you joined was healthcare policy. And it gave us an opportunity to really look at our policy from the past, what we were seeing going through the legislature currently, and we formed a task force. And task forces here at SBAM are made up of members and our small business owners that help direct our policy. And so, Jacob, could you take us through the process of how this task force was formed, why it was formed, the process itself, and then also what was the top issue area that came out of that process?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were saying, when I was jumping in, the legislative scenario that we find ourselves in this year is that for the first time in over 40 years, Democrats have the trifecta, the House, the Senate, and the governorship. And so what this means for us is that there are different bill ideas that were gaining traction that hadn't been gaining traction in 40 years. And as I'm sure you can imagine, the ideas that are being discussed, particularly in healthcare, are much different now than they were 40 years ago. So we had all these bills that were coming up. We didn't know exactly where we would stand on them, even though that we could look at them and know for sure just by looking at them, these would affect small businesses. So this is a place where we would engage. But we just needed to have a refocus of our policy to make sure that we were up to date on what the current issues are, just to make sure that we were focused in our advocacy efforts so we could speak best to what concerns small business owners have in this space. And so, as Kelly said, we did a historic deep dive on past policy. We looked at task forces back from the early 2000s and past variations of board-approved policy. And what we found is that a lot of those policies were focused on individual issues that we just aren't talking about now. I think our most recently updated policy before this one was addressing a lot of the Affordable Care Act implementation. And so we obviously live in a different reality now, and so it was time for a refresh. So the chair of our board called for the creation of a new task force to gather some members together to talk about what are the issues that are most important to them in the healthcare space. And so we sent out invites to our most engaged members. We had some great response on that. I think we had a little over 20 of our most active and engaged members. And these are members from every corner of the state, from northern Michigan and the Upper Peninsula down to southeast Michigan, across various different industries too. So we had a couple of veteran insurance brokers on the task force, and we also had some care providers on the task force, and just where most small business owners fall in this, and that's just as healthcare consumers. And so we had a very wide group of people, and we gathered them all together in a virtual room. And our first question was, what is the single most important issue in healthcare to people in your field, to small businesses in general? And the answer that they gave, all these diverse people across sectors, everyone came together with the resounding answer that the number one most important thing for them in the healthcare space is helping to control the cost of healthcare. And we have seen, and it's not just recent, I mean, for the past 20 years or so, we've seen the cost of healthcare increase. And as the cost of healthcare increases, so too does the cost of health insurance. And as those costs increase, they become a growing burden for small business owners. We've heard from members who, in this task force process, who said that they have had to defer a higher percentage of their premiums onto their employees, and some people who say that they're not able to offer the benefit at all. And we know, especially now when small businesses are having such a hard time finding qualified employees, that it's important to be able to have a competitive benefit package. And not being able to offer that because of the high cost of care is a major competitive disadvantage. So the number one thing, and as we dive deeper in, you'll see each of the policy areas that we talked about in the task force all go back up to this one main concern, and that is trying to control the cost of healthcare for Michigan small business owners.
Yes, and that was laid out very well. It really was the centerpiece of this report. And as we walk through this, Jacob, on the next piece we're going to talk about, please do feel free to visit our website at sbam.org, and this healthcare policy task force report is located there. So the next theme that we heard about was promoting flexibility. Let's dive into that a little bit as the next piece of this puzzle.
Yeah, and as Kelly said, it's on our website under the individual policy positions under the advocacy tab. You'll be able to select the healthcare option, and we have our task force listed in there in the task force report that came from that. And so just diving into what we were concerned about with flexibility, we had a couple of different areas that we were concerned about with flexibility. And that was really protection from needless mandates and preservation of flexibility that makes small businesses competitive in the labor market. We know that from a lot of our members that the flexibility of a small business and the flexibility that they can provide is one of the competitive advantages in hiring. And so we really wanted to express in our report that that the one-size-fits-all mandates that fit all small businesses into the same plans, requiring that they offer the same benefits. This does not work for all employers. Excuse me. And beyond that, one-size-fits-all mandates get between the employer-employee relationship, which is always something that we're going to oppose. Another thing that we had touched on is we'd also like to see small employers be able to pool together through an association health plan. And this is one of those tools that we've seen and can observe is something that can help small businesses compete with their larger counterparts, which is who they're competing with on the labor market. And another one of the areas that we focused in on under flexibility was actually a new policy area for SBAM. And this was something that was unique about this task force, and I don't think we expected to cover when we were going in, but there were a couple of members of the task force who were really enthusiastic about this this new policy area called the catastrophic insurance pool in Michigan. And this is something that other states have adopted and have had success in implementing a catastrophic insurance pool to curb these instances of very high premiums for people who don't qualify for subsidies. And what we see in turn is that can help lower premiums for all in the end.
Great. So the next topic that we really had a deep conversation on was transparency and accountability. So let's move on to that next.
Yeah, I think for transparency and accountability, the top measure or the top line item that we really wanted to make sure when it came across, and this is what came across in our discussions in the task force, is that people want to make sure that employees and employers can make informed decisions about what care works best for them. And that is made so much easier by having transparency and accountability in the healthcare system. And so we really examined and dug into some of the areas where there was not a lot of transparency and how that can hurt the consumer. And so we talked a little bit about something, a growing trend that we've seen in the healthcare market, just increased vertical integration and market consolidation, and how that can hurt transparency and can lead to conflicts of interest. And those conflicts of interest are something that we at least want consumers to be aware. And that was one of the big things, is people need to be educated on how best to shop for insurance and what kind of options are available. And when those conflicts of interest do exist, maybe we can do something to try and avoid those. And in growing and expanding on that, as more care begins to shift into the pharmaceutical lane, there is an increasing need for more transparency in the pharmacy benefit manager or PBM market. Just because that's become such a large part of care, it's something that it's an area of the market that there hasn't been a lot of transparency, and so there's a lot of distrust there. We don't want reporting just for the sake of reporting, but just to eliminate those conflicts of interest and potential price gouging.
Perfect. So let's round out our report by talking about the last point, which was encouraging competition.
Yeah, and a lot of what was discussed in this section, encouraging competition, it covers a lot of the same themes that are present in transparency, because a lot of the same factors that lead to an uncompetitive market are factors that lead to a market that's not very transparent as well. And so we talked about some of that vertical integration and market consolidation. And that's something that we see when, big health systems may, buy up a bunch of smaller practices, when hospitals own health plans, these big hospital mergers, when private equity firms buy up specialty practices. These are all practices that hurt competition in the marketplace. And we know that, going back to that main top level item of reducing costs, that one of the number one ways to reduce costs in the marketplace is to have a competitive marketplace. And also expanding on what we had discussed with pharmaceuticals, we see a lot of opportunity for competition in that space as well. We've seen drug competition suppress competition using patent law. So in our task force report, we advocate for some sort of patent law reform just to stop these predatory practices. And we'd also like to see further competition in spaces. As technology's gotten better, we've seen more utilization of generic drugs and biosimilars, which are some of these things that drug companies have been going after. And then at the base of all this, if we want to address any of this, it does need to be easier and less expensive to bring new pharmaceuticals to market, because one of the main reasons why pharmaceutical companies are so territorial about their patents is because it is so expensive to bring a drug to market in the United States as compared with other countries.
Well, Jacob, thank you for that thorough explanation of our task force report. You can see why Jacob has been such a valuable added member to our team. Jacob, we will look forward to having you back in the future to talk about more items like this. And thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Yes. Thanks, Jacob and Kelly. And I know Jacob mentioned where you can find that healthcare policy information, but we'll go ahead and drop a link here in the chat and on Facebook as well, so you can get to it directly. All right. So Kelly, I want to talk next about a new IRA program that's being proposed by the Michigan House. There was an article in Cranes this week. We'll share that link as well. SBAM's Chief Revenue Officer, Michelle Beebe, did weigh in on that, but I'd love for you to give us a high-level overview of this legislation and where SBAM stands on it.
Yes, thanks, Sarah. And we We are really grateful to Cranes for reaching out to us to ask for our opinion on this legislation. You know that we bring important legislation to you that we want to put on your radar, and this is definitely one of them. So the Representative McFall actually had introduced some legislation about a state managed IRA plan that would be essentially administered by the Department of Treasury. And so this would create a state managed individual retirement plan for approximately 1.6 full and part-time workers who may not already receive healthcare coverage through their employer. And so the goal of what they're saying they're trying to do is to give private sector employees an optional path to a more secure financial future by letting them contribute a portion of their paychecks to this fund. And so companies essentially with one or more employees that have been in business for at least 2 years would be required to participate by enrolling participants in processing payroll deductions unless they offer their own retirement plan. If you recall back when the governor did her budget presentation in February, she did request $3 million to launch a program like this in the Department of Treasury. Now, there's no necessarily a correlation to what Governor Whitmer was proposing and what Representative McFall is proposing. We're not sure if that is a collaboration or not, but we want you to know that this is House Bill 5461. They have not had a hearing on it yet, but they do intend to in mid-April. And we do have some issues with this legislation. For one, it's a mandate. And we know, as what Jacob just went over with healthcare, we do not like people getting in the way of the employer-employee relationship. And so we have expressed our concern to Representative McFall. He has agreed to continue to invite us to the table and having discussions on how we could make this more friendly. We certainly are not against having an option for employees and employers to have access to a retirement plan, but putting a mandate and misdemeanors and penalties on doing so is not the way to go, especially for our members that we know many of them do offer retirement plans. Through this, you could be exempt from that, but the definitions have to be fleshed out. And there are states that do something similar to this, but they are not a mandate. And so we will be working and watching this legislation very closely, working with Representative McFall to bring those concerns to him, sharing those with the committee that will hear it. And hopefully we can get this in a good place where if they're going to walk this road, that it is business friendly. We know that you take good care of your employees. We know that you want what's best for them, but mandates are not the way to go in this lane.
All right, well, thanks for the update there, Kelly. And like I said, we'll be sure to share that article link too. Let's switch to some election news. I think every show here on out will have election news, but this one's about the race for Congress in the Saginaw Bay Area. Some new fundraising numbers were reported, and sounds like there's something interesting about those.
Yes, and I can't help it when I'm on here, so I'm sorry. This is the world I live in, and I want to make sure that everybody's informed. But Brian's talked about the 8th congressional seat currently held by Congressman Kildee, and that seat's been held by a Kildee for a very long time. So the fact that Congressman Kildee announced he will not be rerunning for his seat and will be finished at the end of this term has caused a lot of attention, and it can be a swing seat. It has been, up for grabs with redistricting and all that good stuff. We could see a change here. And so we had highlighted that State Senator Kristen McDonald-Ribbett had thrown her hat in the ring a while back, and she kind of teased out some numbers, if you will, prior to the campaign finance filing deadline, noting that she's raised $825,000 in her first quarter. And one of the donations that kind of jumps off the page to people is Congressman Kildee has donated to her. Now, the reason why this is interesting is because there has been no formal endorsement. But when you're giving money to a candidate, that's a pretty good signal about where you're going to be putting your chips. And so in that teaser report, if you will, there was a notation that she has 1,500 individual donors that Congressman Kildee has maxed out to her campaign. Again, very important to note that. And we know that fundraising will be very important in this race for both Republicans and for Democrats. The Cook Political Report has identified this as in the top 22 of the most important races to watch in the country. And so we just really feel it's important, specifically, and if you're living in that area and you're a member, or even across Michigan, to really pay attention to this specific race. Now, she's not alone in this race. There is a crowded primary for her. And so it includes Flint Mayor Sheldon Neely, former Flint Mayor Matt Collier, State Board of Education President Pamela Pugh, and Michigan Association of Conservation Districts Executive Director Dan Mollinen. And then in the Republican side of this ticket, also very crowded. Paul Jung, who had run against Congressman Kildee in 2022, is also in. Martin Blank is a trauma surgeon in the area, and Anthony Hudson of Grand Blanc. Additionally, yesterday, there was a former Dow executive that got in on the Republican side. So as we continue to watch this race unfold, it looks like maybe Congressman Kildee might be making an announcement about who his pick is in the coming months or weeks and months, but it's heating up over there for sure.
All right, well, thanks for that update. I do want to touch on some automaker news. I know you and Brian talked a little bit about Stellantis and Ford last week as it pertains to electric vehicles, and GM has released some news this week. So what's going on in their world?
We are an equal opportunity with the big three. So covering Stellantis last week, obviously Brian had mentioned they were laying off 400 people. And then Ford as well had mentioned that they were trimming back production of their EV truck at the River Rouge plant and allocating resources in a different way. So today, General Motors, we'll go over what they're reporting. They did report that their first quarter sales were down 1.5%. compared to a year ago. And it really is due to the continued high interest rates and borrowing that we're seeing, which Brian has gone into extensively over the last couple weeks. They did note that they had made a 6% gain in retail sales to consumers, and they do remain the top selling automaker in the nation. So, with every negative, if you will, there is a positive, and they can claim that they're still the top automaker. Interesting to note, though, this was a quote from Edmunds: the new car sales continued in the right direction in quarter one, but given the notable rebound in new vehicle inventory, they arguably could have been better. In this era of sky-high interest rates, affordability is the name of the game, and consumers are laser focused on monthly payments. The automakers can offer compelling vehicles at competitive prices will be the most successful. And as someone who's started to look for a new vehicle, I can tell you, woof, it is expensive to buy a new and a used vehicle. So it's very interesting to kind of see this all unfold. I will note in the EV space, one of their top level executives did say that for the 5th consecutive month, the EV sales are down. They are not seeing the rate of return that they thought, but then also said that they anticipate EVs will always be choppy, and that they also need to be flexible by providing gasoline-powered vehicles. So this is kind of a posture change for GM. They went in pretty heavy on the EV market and going all EV by a certain period of time. And now we're seeing a little bit of a pivot in messaging, which we've been saying all along here. You can't put your chips all in one basket. You have to be flexible and diverse because the market will tell you what it wants. And another note in that article, one of the reasons consumers say they're not buying EVs is because there's a lack of charging stations. The infrastructure is not built. And so we will continue to keep you informed on those types of things. But now we've covered all 3 automakers. So they all got love, if you will, from us. But Sarah, I'm going to ask you a question.
All right.
We have had some exciting news this week surrounding our Women Business Enterprise certification. So can you tell us about that?
Yes, we love bringing new opportunities to our members, valuable opportunities that help you in your business. And this one is specific to women business enterprises. SBAM has offered a small business certification for several years now, and so we're proud to add the Women Business Enterprise certification alongside it. And earlier this week, we announced our partnership with the Great Lakes Women's Business Council. We're offering a discounted WBE certification to our members. And this certification is one of the most widely recognized and respected certifications in the nation. So if you're a women business enterprise, this could definitely help you out with procurement, marketing, and just expanding your visibility among decision makers. So we're really excited to bring this. We're excited to partner with the Great Lakes Women's Business Council and just adding another tool to, to our member benefits toolkit.
Yes, wonderful partner of ours, and so thankful that they are walking alongside us in this space. Can you tell us how people can get more information about this opportunity?
Yes, thanks. We're actually hosting a webinar on Tuesday, April 9th. So next Tuesday, it's at noon. It's going to talk about the benefits of WBE. It'll cover who qualifies and how you can go about becoming certified. So the webinar is free. I recommend registering for the webinar, even if you can't attend live, because all registrants will receive that recording in your email within a few hours of the event. And then, of course, we'll share some links to the webpage that houses more details as well. So if you're a women business enterprise and have some woman ownership, definitely check this out. There is a discount involved too for SBAM members, like I mentioned. So again, Tuesday, April 9th, noon.
All right. Well, that was a full show for us today. And if you're interested in any of this, please make sure that you visit our website. All the different pieces of legislation, task force reports, tools that we can help provide to you is all located there. And you can also reach out to any of us at any time to help direct you if you're feeling a little lost. So we hope you have a great weekend. Thanks for spending the week with us.
Thanks, everybody. We'll be back here on Monday.